All right, let's dive right in. Today, in this explainer, we're exploring the historical and psychological depth of the Buddha's absolute foundational teaching. We're looking at a framework that has survived for over 2 millennia, not just as a religious doctrine, but honestly, as a surprisingly profound, almost clinical analysis of the human experience. So let's challenge a really common misconception right off the bat. People often hear these teachings and think, wow, that sounds incredibly pessimistic. But when you actually read the source texts, the Buddha sounds a lot more like a physician diagnosing a universal human condition. Think about it. If you go to a doctor and they diagnose you with an illness, you don't say they're being pessimistic, right? That's just a realistic starting point so you can actually find a cure. Okay, here is our roadmap. We'll start with the first sermon, explore finding the middle way, unpack the reality of dukkha, examine the engine of craving, and finally, wrap up with the path to peace. Part 1. The first sermon. It's totally fascinating to trace the exact sequence of events here. According to the historical texts, right after achieving enlightenment, the Buddha actually hesitated. He felt this truth was so subtle, so entirely against the stream of normal human desires, that literally nobody would get it. It took an appeal from a celestial king to finally convince him to teach. Only then did he make that journey to the deer park to find his former ascetic companions. Now, the title of this discourse, the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, is definitely a mouthful, but it translates beautifully to setting in motion the wheel of the Dhamma. This wasn't just, a casual speech to five guys in a park. It was viewed as this massive cosmic event that initiated a profound shift in human understanding. Part 2. Finding the middle way. Before delivering his medical diagnosis, the Buddha had to address two dead-end extremes he knew all too well. Because remember, as a prince, he lived in total luxury, the ultimate sensory indulgence. But then later, he swung wildly to the other extreme, starving himself in brutal asceticism. It's kind of like bouncing between a complete couch potato lifestyle and a punishing crash diet. He realized both were utterly fruitless. One distracts the mind entirely, and the other just breaks the body. By rejecting those extremes, he discovered the Majjhima Patipada, the middle way. But don't mistake this for just a casual, lazy compromise. It's actually a highly calibrated state of ethical and mental balance that allows the mind to see reality clearly, and that ultimately paves the way to nibbana, or unconditioned peace. Part 3. The reality of dukkha. Look, translating dukkha merely as suffering completely misses its psychological depth. It's so much broader than just physical pain or immediate grief. It's more like a subtle, unavoidable friction that's woven right into the human fabric. It encompasses this deep unsatisfactoriness, inadequacy, and really just the sheer unpredictability of our existence. And this breaks down into 3 very relatable levels. The first, dukkha dukkha, is obvious. It's the straightforward physical and mental pain we all experience. But the second, viparinama dukkha, is that quiet nagging ache when you buy a brand new phone and eventually watch the battery degrade, or that weird dread you feel on the very last day of an amazing vacation. It's the friction of impermanence. And the third type, samkhara dukkha, well, that points to the very foundation of our existence. To explain that third level, the text suggests we are actually a solid self, but rather a temporary combination of 5 shifting aggregates: form, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. We are essentially a river, constantly flowing and changing. Grasping onto these ever-changing currents as a permanent I is the absolute deepest level of dukkha. It's literally like trying to hold onto water with a clenched fist. Part 4. The engine of craving. So the immediate cause of all this friction is tanha. Think of it as the fuel keeping a fire burning. It's a craving that is never ever fully satisfied, much like pouring water into an endless ocean. It's not just casually wanting a cup of coffee. It's a demanding, thirsty attachment that drives every single one of our actions and keeps the whole cycle of existence spinning. This demanding desire manifests in 3 psychological states. First is kamatanya, the craving for sensory hits. The perfect meal, a beautiful view, or even clinging stubbornly to our own opinions. Second is bhavatanya, the craving to become, desiring a big promotion, fame, or an eternal legacy. And finally, vibhavatanya. This is the dark mirror to the others, the craving for non-existence. It's the urge to just escape, to annihilate what we hate, or find total oblivion. Together, they form a relentless engine inside us. Part 5. The path to peace. But here is the good news. A cure actually exists. The third reality is an unshakable liberation of the mind, achievable through practice. Once you completely let go of that thirsty craving we just analyzed, the fuel is gone, the fire goes out, the engine stops. And what remains? Absolute peace. So how do we actually get there? Well, the Buddha prescribed this highly structured middle way as the practical lived treatment to end dukkha. This is the Noble Eightfold Path. It's a comprehensive system covering ethics, mental discipline, and wisdom. Honestly, it's not a set of commandments to blindly follow. Actually, scratch that. It's more like an interconnected set of skills that you have to actively develop over a lifetime. What's truly fascinating in the original texts is that they aren't just called noble truths that you're supposed to blindly believe. They are realities to be experienced by the spiritually ennobled. And the word Arya doesn't mean some social class or caste here. It refers to a nobility of the mind. The goal isn't rote memorization, it's to deeply penetrate these concepts until your mind is completely transformed by the insight. And that brings us to the real culmination of the first sermon. As the Buddha finished speaking, Venerable Kundanya had a massive, profound realization, which instantly set the wheel of the Dharma in motion. The texts note the wheel only actually turned at the exact second Kundanya grasped the truth. He looked at reality and fundamentally understood. Absolutely everything that arises must inevitably pass away. So, knowing that everything that arises must eventually cease, how can you apply this ancient medical diagnosis to your own life today? It's a framework that challenges us to look incredibly closely at our own hidden cravings. The diagnosis has been written for over 2 millennia. The question is, are you ready to take the medicine